Bucheche, everybody in Cyberland. It's a fair Babalao. At least I hope so. Como Odun, Odileke coming at you with the Letra de Año. We all been waiting this. I know for a lot of Babalaos, super busy, right? At the end of the year and the beginning of the year, as families are coming together and people are uniting, right? To have parties and festivities. That's not something that we have the pleasure of doing because a lot of Babalaos are working hard. And a particular shout out to the Babalaos in the Isle of Kola y Osha, that is based out of Miami, right? In this particular house, a lot of respected Babalaos took the time, the effort, in order to feed the different cardinal points of this earth, in order to include feeding divinities that were super vital in giving us the insight of no kidding what is the letra de año. But obviously, this particular letra de año, I would like to also emphasize that there's a lot of things that I saw this year that I thought was very interesting, especially when it came to letra de año, right? Letra de año, please understand this is a function that Ifa plays. And the reason why a function that Ifa plays is because Orumila was the Elerepin, the witness to creation, which is allowed us as Babalaos to invoke Ifa, the words of God, in order to give us a profound knowledge and wisdom of what is the year to come. Because Ifa is at a universal type level, it can give us a good overarching overview so that practitioners and followers can see, no kidding, what does 2024 have to offer for that land. So with that said, many people ask me, where's Letra de Año de Cuba? I'm going to do one for Cuba as well. But the one I'm going to do for Cuba is particularly out of where Miguel Febre Patron and his Ile, at a certain point in time before they migrated into Havana, started that particular Letra de Año. The Letra de Año from the commission that is based there, the Commission for Yoruba Culture in Havana, I am not going to do, because particularly we're going to go back to the foundations where Letra de Año originated from, and we're going to go through the rites and the rituals where the original folks did it. Why? Because that is the right thing to do in order to honor the lineage, which many of us come from Miguel Febre Patron. Many of us come from Tata Gitang. Many of us, or all of us in Lukumi, one way, shape, or form, your Ifa came from Adechina. So doing things the right way is important. That's number one. Number two, the reason why I don't go with the commission in Havana is because there was a sacred moment when we used to let the youngest Babalao, just recently coming out of the room of Ifa, right, be able to manipulate the kings because they had no knowledge. There was no bias. There was nothing to support one bias or another. So the youngest was always something that was very honored in this tradition, and this is something that needs to continue. The commission and the Yoruba Commission, right, for this spiritual, society or organization in Havana did not do that. Therefore, I cannot honor something that is being dishonored from the legacy and the lineages of things that need to come. When it comes to Delegun, again, this is an Ifa function. This is not a Delegun function, not taking anything away from me to Delegun, but this is a function of Ifa because Orumila was the witness to creation, and those things need to be understood in order for us to truly understand the concepts of Letra de Año. Again, not trying to take anything away from anyone. But when you look at the secrets of what is Ocha and Orisha worship, we talk about the elements of this world, this earth that's invoked through Mere de Legun, right? When we start looking at the elements of nature, when we start talking about who controls what on this earth, and that's how we get to Mere de Legun, where Ifa is looking at things from a more overarching aspect and giving us a profound aspect so that we can, no kidding, tell you a story on how 2024 is going to affect everyone and their destiny, particularly because Ifa is where we construct and we were able to tell you what your destiny is based on when you came down from Olorum. So there is my disclaimer before I start to dive into Letra de Año. So with that said, Iburu Iboe Bucheche, let's get after it. Let's jump right in. And here we are. Letra de año. When you look at letra de año, better yet here, you're going to see that all letra de año is very similar to an ita, very similar to a consultation. You're always going to have three oduns that are going to be represented. The primary odun, which we notice here, is obeche. Okay, and then we have a complementary odun, obehueña, and then we have another complementary odun, which obedi. And for those of you who are Bawalaos and understand how to do the further understandings of idas and consultations, you understand that it closes the same as the second witness. So there's no point in going over that, right? But it is important to note that Obedi has not just an aspect of a second witness, but it's very, very important for us to pay attention to Obedi because Obedi also can almost play as a primary Odum, being that it's repeated, which means that Ifa is telling us we have to pay extra attention to Obedi. So let's jump right in. What do we know about Obeche? What do we know about Obeche? You understand that Obeche has a famous pataki that talks about the African gray parrot, the one with the red tail, right? The one that every Bawalao or in this faith, one way, shape, or form, we use that particular parrot feather, which is from an African gray. We call it plumaloro or odierere. That particular feather, let's go over the pataki to better understand. There was a parrot that used to be ridiculed because the parrot was all white and it was pure and it was clean. But the parrot didn't know how to really take confrontation very well, very passive aggressive. And this parrot used to get picked on and bullied on by all the other birds. Olofin one day called a meeting of all the birds. And what happened was those same bullies, those same, I guess we can call them the envious birds because everybody wanted to be the all clean white. They decided to throw dirt on them, throw ashes at it. And the bird was completely dirty. And at a certain point, they started to even throw palm oil at the bird. But they couldn't get the bird's top because the bird was flying away. And it got to the tail, and the tail was red. The body was gray. And when the birds made it to Olofin's palace, they noticed at that very moment that Olofin sat next to the bird and said, "What a peculiar bird." And because of it, transformed the bird to maintain that appearance, which what you see today is the African gray parrot. Now, Olofin also mandated that that feather that comes from the African gray parrot, that plumaloro, the odierere, that particular feather is one that will always be on the crown of all kings and queens, all priests and priestesses, which is the same reason why we always use that as an amulet, as something to push away the luck. I'm sorry, push away the envy and the jealousy and the betrayal that was shown to the African gray parrot, as you begin to kind of see that in that story, we're surrounded by envy. We're surrounded by the aspects of we guess we can call it opposition in life. But like the African gray parrot was able to show us what good character looked like. Didn't take it head on, didn't necessarily fight, didn't battle, right? They weren't throwing punches and wasn't going back, but was still able to find a place of elevation. And these mystical stories and these patakis, particularly in that pataki, Beche, begins to teach us that we may have people around us that are no good for us. Let's look at the ethical teachings of the pataki. We have to pay attention because if not, we will be ridiculed. If not, we will be thrown with dirt and mud, right? And ashes and palm oil. But particularly, if we want to look for the evolution, if we want to rise to the occasion this year, we have to begin to walk like royalty. The pluma loro, right, is something that signifies spiritual beginnings, signifies that evolution to that top tier of spiritual transformation. Obeche is already telling us for this year that if you have any pending things that you have to receive, if you are destined to go get crowned, if you are destined to go to Ifa, then this is your year. Because not only are we looking at the fact that it's Obeche, but we have to look at the prophecy that complements Obeche to truly understand where it's going. So when we look at Ire, Ariku, Oyale, Tese, Lese, Orumila, we look at the assured blessings of survival and longevity that is no kidding assured by the authority of Orumila. But who's Orumila but wisdom? And invoking that wisdom through the knowledge and the understanding to this Odun is advice number one. This year you gotta get after it. If you don't have your hand of Ifa, then you better find a Babalao that you trust, that you want to help push you forward. For this particular reason, even I am going to hold more mano de orumila or hand of Ifa plantes this year in order to capture the folks that want to take advantage of this advice and they want to see the prosperity and the stability and the health and the love, the assured blessings given by Orumila. Because that's what all Babalao should be doing. Prepare to do a lot of plantes for mano de orula for those who don't have it. For those who need to go to Ifa, now is your year. Babalaos, prepare yourselves. Get the group, get the band together. Let's start pushing people to Ifa where they need to be. For those who are destined to go get crowned, go get crowned. The Pluma Loro is the crown, right? The Pluma Loro is the crown in Ifa and Ocha. The Pluma Loro is the crown that goes on Eshu. This is the reason why this is so vital this year, so that you can continue to see that assured blessing and survival of your prosperity, your health, your love for you and your family. Okay. Now, something else that I want to tackle when we look at the primary Odun Obeche and we look at the prophecy, we have to look at, let me go to this side, let me go to this side. Man, these cameras. We look at Ochun, right? We look at Ochun and Chango. All right. So background, not my specialty. Ifa is my specialty. So Ochun, what is Ochun? Ochun, in particularly Obeche, we look at the divinity that raised Elegua. Okay, something to think about. Ochun raised Elegua in Obeche, which means that now is the time for us to align ourselves with Elegua, to ensure that we are raising the right quality of people into this world. That if you are a parent and you have children, are you doing everything possible to ensure that this child has good character? Are you ensuring that they're ethical and they're moral? And if you are a priest or a priestess with God's children, are you taking advantage of them? Are you raising them properly? Are you teaching them? Or are you hiding behind the excuse that secrets are secrets and we can't reveal it? Yet not everything is a secret, yet you refuse to teach. Are you hiding behind the fact that maybe there's a language barrier? Therefore, if I have to put extra effort, I'm taking too much time. Obeche, through Ochung and Elewa, begin to reveal to us that we need to elevate our children so that they can become the greatness of who they are. When we look at Obeche, Obeche is a sign that says that you have no friends. Your friends are the Orishas, the Egungs, and Ifa. Bottom line. Obeche says that the same way the Pluma Loro found itself alone, but was able to find the elevation, don't be surprised if this year you have to make tough decisions. Who do you want around you? Who do you want to keep by your side that's going to help either promote you or is going to be your advocate, but it's not someone that's just constantly bringing you drama, gossip, ridicule, doesn't value you, doesn't appreciate the efforts you put into the same relationship. And this can be your blood family, this could be your friends, this could be your job, this could be anything. But in Obeche, it's important for us to look at that spiritual enlightenment and start to complement it with your physical environment. Why? Because that is how you get to that assured blessings and survival. In Obeche, Chango is fed here with Eshu, right? We feed Chango and we give a yame to Eshu. The Babalaos got it. They know the Ebola they gotta do with Obeche, with Chango and Eshu. But particularly the reason why we do this is to ensure the happiness and where we're going. Right? Obeche begins to tell us that if we're going to begin to travel and we're going to begin to move from where we're at, if you're going to change your job, if you're going to do anything like that, go and do the ebo necessary. Seek the advice of Ifa so that you can mark the ebos and you can get the ebos done that you need to ensure that you keep the blessings and the longevity that's coming towards you. Because Ifa says in an Ombeche, you have to go through that cycle and that process in order to truly find yourself successful. But more importantly, because of the envy, because of the jealousy, because of certain things that also come up in Ombeche, we got to look at another divinity that's not necessarily listed on here, and that's Ogun. Ogun stands up for Obeche, but Ogun, particularly through the power of Ochun, is resonating here. And this is the reason why we got to do a bosses to Ogun this year. We have to find a way to give Ogun a fish. And not only just a fish, but you prepare with the basic ingredients. You go to a priest and a priestess and they teach you how to do it, right? And then you offer that to Ogun and then you take it to the railroad tracks with his derecho and boom. You're going to see that Ogun now is setting you up for success. Why? Because Ogun as a warrior, Chango as a warrior, Eshu as the road opener and the communicator to Olodumare, and Ochun being fertility, being love. You have all your bases that are starting to get covered, right? With the pluma loro that goes on your head as the crown that was mandated by the Olofin, you are covering all your bases. And that's what Obeche wants you to do, cover your bases so that you can enact a prophecy that's as beautiful as this one. So please do your part. Now, Obeche, because we talk a lot about the aspects of the crown, the head, and for those who go to Ocha, Ifa, or those who are sanderos, sanderas, or babalaos, you guys understand we go through a process where the head goes through a transformation when you become a priest and a priestess. This year, I warn each and every one of you, don't interfere with the productivity of your head. That means your hair, right? Maintain a nice groom standard, but more importantly, don't dye your hair. Do not dye your hair. Because remember, when the parrot was dyed, it was because it was being ridiculed. You place those chemicals on your head, you are opening up the energies of ridicule and envy, right, in your life. This year, Obeche says, don't dye your hair. Be free with who you are. Don't change your appearances because you think you have to. Cut your hair, groom yourself, yes, but don't dye your hair and adding chemicals, and don't dye yourself because remember, even the parrot had to go through a transformation and you don't want to be that parrot. Okay. And Obeche talks about the Eguns, talks about the Egun protector, your spirit guide, your number one, right? For those of you who don't know who your spirit guide is, all right, now is the time for you to talk to the priest and the priestesses and begin to figure out, where is this spiritual misa? But not just a spiritual misa, but an investigative misa. You got to know your spiritual framework. Your spirit guide is very important this year. Why? Because as we transition and we analyze this, right? Ubeche tells you, go get crowned. It tells you go do Ifa. It tells you go get mano de orula. But more importantly, what's going to complement you in your Egun cuadro is your spirit guide. Understanding who your spirit guide, aligning with that is more important than a lot of well, it's complementary. I'm not going to say more important. It's complementary to all the other spiritual initiations and ceremonies you got to get into. That's important. Do not underestimate the power of the Eguns. And that's going to be very important, especially as we begin to see Ochun governing. Chango is there, right? And accompanying Ochun. We look towards Chango for the resolution, the justice, right? For the parrot and that story. But more importantly, I would like to share another story with you in Obeche. Obeche, there was a Bataki that talked about when the king was trying to get Orumila from his kingdom to his kingdom. And Orumila kept denying, I'm not going, I'm not going, I'm not going. But finally, the king got wise and invoked Ochun and told Ochun, can you please bring Orumila to me? Ochun being Ochun went to Orumila's house, wined and dined and spent time with Orumila. When Orumila slept, gathered all the tools, the Opun Ifa, the Ecoles, the Inquines, basic ingredients and herbs, put it all in a handkerchief and tied it. In the morning, Ochun said, hey, I'm leaving. Would you like to accompany me? Orumila said, yes, sure, why not? Let's go. So she took the handkerchief with all the Orumila's tools in it and departed. They got to the river, which they needed to cross to get to the other kingdom. Orumila said, nah, I can't do that. I gotta respect the ocean, which is my other point here. Respect the ocean. In this sign, we talk about Ochun, respect the river. I'm sorry, not the ocean, the river. So Orumila casted and received the sign of Obeche. Did the Ebo cross the river and got the blessings to cross the river? Now, what does that tell you? That tells us for this year, we need to pay close attention to Ochun. And before we cross Ochun's rivers, before we make a long journey, go to the river and offer something to Ochun. Okay, let's fast forward now. Now, Orumina is in front of the king. But what the king was trying to mandate was to try to figure out whether or not what was going on in his kingdom. His kingdom was at war, and the king needed to know who was his army versus everybody else's army and who he can trust. And Orumila did the Ebo. And the Ebo that he did, Eshu mandated it because the Ebo was to Eshu. And Orumila eating with Eshu is your Mano de Orumila ceremony. Remember that? They don't eat together necessarily, but it's a sequence of events that happens during your hand of Ifa. Right? But listen to this. This Pataki is already telling you and pushing you towards hand of Ifa. But more importantly, to put a feather in all of the king's warriors and knights so that they can recognize who is an ally to the king, the Plumaloro. Right? So when we look at these patakis, we begin to see the Obeche is rich in spiritual essence. We begin to kind of see that nonetheless, Obeche's theme is to, in order to avoid the struggles, in order to avoid the envy and the espionage, etc., we do the proper sacrifices. We listen to the advice. We ensure that we invoke the advice that was given to you today. But more importantly, always remember that you always have to plan things out. Obeche's greatest enemy is disorganization. In Obeche, there's a common theme that we talk about Ochun, and we say that Ochun is a divinity of laughter, emotion, power, right? Her ability to raise Elegua is not an easy feat. But Ochun, particularly in this particular Obeche and this Odunifa, talks about the queen of laughter and the false laughter. That's why they talk about Ochun, and there's references of Ochun when she cries and she laughs. You need to be more worried when she's laughing than you do when she's crying. And Ochun in this side is not here to play games. She's here to regulate. Ochun is the power of the feminine energy that we need in this faith in order to drive, right? In order to drive for change. Don't forget that. All right. Now, let's go to Obehueña. Let's look and see what Obehueña has in store for us. But Obehueña, what are we going to say about Obehueña? When we look at Obehueña, we talk about the drumming ceremonies to the Eguns. We talk about the divinity we call Orun, right? There's two brothers, Egungun and Orun. In Lukumi, we focus on Orun because Orun is what protects us from the night. Orun is what protects us from the things that go bump in the night, but is the most powerful thing that even Iku has fear. Obehueña is a beautiful sign because it begins to talk to us about the divinities of the night, the divinities of the cemetery, the divinities and the witches, right, that come and we need to understand and honor. Obeweña. Okay. Now, when we look at Obeweña, what we talk about here is order and discipline. Order and discipline. For those of you who have itas, for hand of Ifa, or you're a Babalao, or you received a divinity of Ifa, one way, shape, or form that gave you advice, Ifa is telling us to be successful. And we see the spiritual evolution in Obeche, and in Obeweña, we need to begin to analyze, are we following our ita? Are we asking for advice to Orumila to merely ignore it? Are we asking, how do I remove this barrier through an ebo, but we don't do it? That's Obeweña, where the powers of the night come together in order to ensure that those things that need to be removed are removed. For those osolbos that don't need to necessarily be enacted because people follow the ebos and people follow the itas, don't get enacted. We have to support the aspects of Obeweña in that particular model. When we look at Obeweña, right, we look at the society of Oro. My biggest advice is if anybody has a path to receive Oro, this is something that's very important, right? Oro is going to be received by the men. For the women, make sure you have your teja de egun, right? That is going to be two fundamental things that need to be talked about with your spiritual elders. Remember, these videos are not meant to overcome or change the things that your godparents are doing for you or the path they're putting you on. But I'm merely giving you what the Letra de Año is saying for this country, the United States of America, through Miami, because this is where we live. I don't live in Cuba, not necessarily investing my spiritual energy to do things that Cuba is saying, if they're doing it in Cuba, when I need something a little bit closer to home. Hopefully that makes sense. Houses can be divided and can lead to separation. Obeweña says, as we find our spiritual elevation, as we begin to push forward, as we begin to find ourselves, that we need to find compromise with our spiritual houses. We need to find compromise with our physical world, because as we take off the blinders, we begin to see that maybe not everything is truly what it's supposed to be. Obeche, the false laughter, the Ochun shows us the mask that people put on. Obeweña, what goes bump in the night. We need to begin to analyze. We need to begin to look at our circles. We need to begin to pay attention to those that are envying us, like Obeche told us, that are going to throw dirt at us, like Obeche told us, that in order for us to elevate, we need to push those things aside. And Obeweña is telling you now is the time. Right? Clear as day. And as you begin to look at it, Obeweña talks about a lot of good things, especially the lack of conformity. Obeweña has an old saying, focus on the things that you need, not necessarily on the things that you want. Right? Oduns or Ifa are stronger than brujeria. Right? We have a lot of sayings that come out of Obeweña. We talk about where the abiku makes a liar out of the doctor. Right? So let's analyze a couple of those. This year, Ifa is saying focus on the positive aspects of the faith. Work on your spiritual elevation, like Obeche said. Obeweña says, forget about the brujeria. If you're the type of person who likes to do brujeria and you want to manipulate people and you want to get after it and you want to fight, rock on. But you're going to go against Ifa and you're going to have to deal with a lot of things that go bump in the night. Odun Ifa is stronger than brujeria. This is not an egotistical contest. It's just, again, Ifa is looking at things at a broader sense and it's saying that you're not going to win. So if you're not going to win, why do you try? Why do you waste your money? Why do you waste your efforts? Instead of doing bad, do good. Focus on something positive. That's the deeper meaning of Obeweña. When we talk about the Abigu makes a liar the doctor, there's destinies that cannot be changed. If a child was born to die, a child was born to die because that's how God designed it, based on when Ori was coming down and why that needed to happen. Everything in this life happens for a reason. And although it may hurt, although it may be a tragedy, we need to remember that we cannot wrap ourselves around things that are happening in the physical plane, because you don't know the difference between destiny or just foolishness. Have faith in yourself, have faith in God that things are working themselves out the way it needs to work out. That is another saying in Obehueña. That's why we say the Abiku makes a liar of the doctor. Because the doctor said you got a healthy 9-month-old baby, we're about to give birth, and the baby doesn't cry, the baby dies. And you wonder why. And you think you're cursed. And you think everything under the sun, not realizing that was destiny. And again, in Obehueña, we talk about where the spiritual elders get punished. Priests and priestesses. I began to mention this in Obeche. We got to raise our children. Ochun said it when she was raising Elewa. This is how we need to do business. Elewa is a trickster. Elewa opens up the door, but Elewa is a communicator. Elewa this, that, and the other. Imagine how hard it was to raise Elewa. Imagine how hard it is to be a leader of an Ile, a spiritual house that's going to do right. Obehueña, well, Obeche tells me that as a spiritual leader, I need to do more. I need to be more proactive to the needs of the house. I need to be a better leader. Obehueña is warning us already that suffer penalties set forth to the elders by Orun. That's why it's important that if you need to receive Orun, you might want to get after it. Babalaos, Obehueña came out. Clean yourself with a gallina over your Orun. And if you don't have Orun, that's a problem. Go receive Orun ASAP if you're a Babala. I will leave it there. Obehueña speaks about the spirits, the feminine spirits of this world. We got Ochung leading the charge. We have the witches of the night in Obehueña, right? We talk about Oro. We talked about your spirit guide in Obeche, and now we're talking about the spirits of the femininity in Obehueña. For those of you who have loved ones who have passed away, specifically those that are of feminine nature, all of you who don't have a teja, get a teja. Those of you who have a teja, perfect. Turn your teja around and give honor to the feminine energy. Do that at least once a month. Turn that teja around and give some form of thanks to the feminine energy, because it's resonating and it's giving us a hell of a prophecy. And that's what the prophecy that we want and we want to maintain. Little tricks of the trade in order for us to elevate ourselves. When we talk about Obehueña, I'm going to point out to the Babalaos and the Santeros and the Santeras, there is a thing that we do in Obara, that we do with Ochun, right? And we put a small jar, the Ecoles, the Opon Ifa, etc. That if you have an opportunity to ask Ifa, if that's something you can do, do it. Not only is Ochun ruling this year, but she's also, at the end of the day, being represented in Obehueña, in Obeche, and she's coming out strong. The right thing for the priests and the priestesses to do is see if that's something that we can do. Ask Ifa and move on, so you can continue to lock in that blessing that you need. Suggestion, I'm not trying to put myself in the middle of houses. In addition, Obehueña is the unity of two partners. This is where a person is looking for that intimate partner, or a person that's looking for that person that's going to complement them in life. And that is time for you to find it. Obehueña with Ochun present and Chango present tell us multiple things with Obeche and Obehueña, that it is time for you to find the love, find the partner that you need. Because Obehueña says now is the time, but do it carefully. Don't pick people that are not worth a damn. Don't pick people that are going to belittle you. Don't pick people that are going to not appreciate you. Begin to understand where the lanes are and understand that you need to push forward. We need to examine quite a few things with Obehueña, right? More particularly on how we look at real life situations and how we apply and the aspects of love within our family, within our friends, with our intimate partners, because Obehueña talks a lot about that. And you have Ochun again that is governing this year. And that's something that's very important. Okay. For the most part, I want to say Mafarafun Ochun. Now, let's go into Obedi so we can start to dig into Obedi a little bit. And this is the one that truly excites me. Obedi kakadi adifayoko baradegung adifafun ochun. Adifafun ogun, the fish, right? Mafarafun Orishas. Okay, Obedi. Obedi. After laughter is when we can truly begin to see the aspects of life. After laughter. What does that mean? It means Ochung is pretty present again, right? It means that Ochung is coming out telling us certain things, that we need to be able to find life and look at the humor of things, not look at the tears. Follow your heart, but understand that don't take everything so seriously. Obedi is in charge of something here, and a lot of people neglect it, right? And I'm going to touch on all the typical things of Obedi, but it's one particular thing that I want to talk about. That Obedi begins to tell us that we need to look for the love in our life. Obedi is when the genitals of the male and the genitals of the female were created, but they went to war with each other. It's a famous pataki in Obedi. It's the art of lovemaking. That's Obedi. Obedi is now complementing what I finished talking about in Obeduena, where we need to start to unify, right? Find the love, find the spiritual elevation, and begin to bring that back into your life. For those of you who like to overthink things, for those of you who like to live in stress and anxiety and everything else, you are in for a rude awakening. Get rid of all of that. Cut the anchors. Stop playing, right? You have to even analyze, because in Obeche, you got to analyze your family, your friends. You got to analyze everything. What's not good needs to go away. You need to let in the love. What's positive is positive. Leave the brujeria alone, like Obeduena is telling us. But more importantly, why Obedi is important, like I was telling you guys earlier, Obedi stands to be almost Otoyale when you look at these three Odums, to the point where we wake up Orumila with Obedi. Obedi advises us that our Ori is in charge. Your Ori is the most important thing in this world. Your Ori is the most important divinity that represents you. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're crowned. I don't care about anything. Because Obedi tells us that your Ori, your subconscious mind, is what's going to gear you to where you got to be. That includes me. I'm not excluded from there. So don't take offense to it, but just understand who your Ori is. Your Ori is the capacity to be great, the capacity to gather information, the capacity to grow, both spiritually and physically, because your Ori is guiding you. Another reason why you have to receive Hand of Ifa. Another reason why you got to pay attention to your Ita. Another reason why that if you're crowned, you already know you have a crown in your head. Therefore, that's surrounding your Ori, but it's not your Ori. You better start tapping into the Miri de Legun and all those signs that you got to include your Ita and Mano de Orula. And for those of you who are Babalao, start looking through all your Itas and start analyzing your Ori. Because that's what Obedi is telling us to do. Obedi is wisdom. Right? Obedi is where Ori came down. But here's the thing with Obedi. Here's the thing with Obedi. You have to be careful about the addictive nature of things that can affect your mind. For those of you who like to drink a lot of coffee, caffeine, for those of you who like to smoke the nicotine, for those of you who like all those chemicals, right? Think about it. In Obeche, you don't dye your hair. We resonated on the Zapataki of the parrot. Obedi is saying your Ori is trying to shine, but yet we cloud it with drugs and alcohol, etc., etc. Everything in moderation, people. Everything in moderation, to include caffeine, nicotine, drugs, alcohol, whatever that may look like. You have to start to feed and nourish your Ori. Don't abuse it. So Obedi, and this sign We have a lot of luck and intelligence, especially with a great prophecy as we have this year, to do a lot of great things. I'm fearful that a lot of people are not going to do it. I would challenge everyone to grab 8 coconuts and paint them white. Clean yourself with them. Place them somewhere high. And if you have Obatala, place them with Obatala. And allow those coconuts to resonate in your life for this year. Allow those coconuts, as they begin to change and take shape and they crack and they go bad, you get rid of them one by one, allowing those coconuts to absorb the negativity in your life, but more importantly, bring you the clarity that only Obatala can bring you. Because Obedi says there's going to be challenges to reach that aspect of Obeche, which is you getting your crown, you getting the clarity, you finding where your Ori needs to go and how it needs to get there. There will still be challenges, but can you make these challenges work for you? Yes. How? Do a consultation that's going to lead you into the new year. Everyone should be doing consultations in January. Right now, my calendar is flooded with consultations that I'm going to bend over backwards to get everybody in, because it's important for them to take this Letra de Año and begin to incorporate it in their lives and find the exact ebos that work for them. Not the generic ebos, but what works for you, because your Ori is already telling me you're an individual. There's no cookie cutter approach, nothing. But that is something that we have to begin to analyze and push forward through. You got to look at the secrets of Obedi. Obedi is wisdom. Right? Obedi has a philosophical saying, you know what I mean? When we talk about the life cycles, we talk about the laughter and the crying. We talk about the 4 elements. Obedi, man, is a tremendous sign that is coming holistically and telling us that if we don't round ourselves out, if we don't find ourselves both physically and spiritually, we're going to find ourselves in a bad place. It's time to find balance in your life. It's time to find love in your life. It's time to find positivity in your life. That is something that we have to look at. And we look at the dual nature of Ochun and Chango, right? In this Letra de Año, we're talking about the nurture and the destruction, the justice and the love. We look at 2 entities that are complementing ourselves, are complementing our world, but more importantly, they're telling us that we need the duality. We need to have the balance in our life in order to truly do well. And that's something that's very important. In addition, for those of you who have Chango, revise and look at your Chango Ita. For those of you who have Ochun, revise your Ochun Ita. For those of you who have Mano de Orula, same thing, etc., etc., etc. Why? Because these are the governing divinities that are coming forward and are leading the charge. So my advice to the priests and priestesses and those who have Mano de Orula, it's time to get back down to basics. Start looking at your things. All right. So with that said, I want to leave you with words of encouragement. We have a beautiful, beautiful letra de año. Do not spoil it by not following the advice. Obeche, obeweña, obedi, talking about sure blessing, survival, longevity established by the authority of Orumila, right? With Ochun and Chango. That's it. We have the keys to success. We have to sacrifice in order to get to where we got to get to. And with that said, hopefully you guys found this informative. Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche. Happy New Year's from my family to yours. And may you guys have a blessed one always.